It is a scam when you don't allow everyone to operate on fair terms.
We are the Robin Hoods of sports betting. We take something back from the rich bookies and enable our customers to beat them instead.
G'day everyone, welcome to episode 46 of the Trademate Sports Betting Podcast. Today, as you've probably seen in the title, we're going to be talking about the Premier League, the return of the Premier League, which will be on in about 10 days, starts on September the 12th, season 2021. It's been a very short break, but it's good to be back already. Joined by some serious people, some serious football experts today. We're not going to be talking too much about betting as we normally do on the podcast. It's all just going to be about football and our predictions, maybe do a bit of future tips at the end, see what we think is of good value at the moment. But I guess this is just more of a footballers podcast. As always, joined by Card Spreadsheets George Gamble. How are you, mate?
Yeah, doing well, mate. Thank you very much. How are you?
Yes, very good, mate. For those who don't know, Man City tragic George Gamble. Also joined by pro sports bettor Neil Shah, who is also a Spurs tragic. The sad case of affairs. And last but not least, Trademate Sports CEO, the man that pays my wages, Marius Norheim. How are you, mate?
Oh, Alex, pleasure to be on. Ready to talk some football.
Yeah, and I bet you can't wait to start talking about Liverpool winning the title. It's been a while since you've been able to talk about that. But fellas, quiz question of the week. What do we think? Which team conceded the fewest goals in an EPL, a single EPL season? So we'll get to the answer at the end, but something to stew over. And for your listeners, think of your answers. But it's quite a shocking result, I would say. So that'll be very interesting. But we might as well kick it off. Talk about Liverpool, the winners from last year. I guess we'll order it in terms of how the ladder finished last season. So Liverpool, I'll give a brief description of how they're looking this season. Key signings. I mean, Marius, you can probably do a better job at pronouncing this name, but some Greek fella that can play left back, Konstantinos Tismi. Oh, I'm not even going to go there. Key losses.
I think it's the Zimikas, but yeah, I'm not 100% sure myself.
I think the T silent, Alex.
Yeah, sorry. Not fluent in Greek, as you all know. Key losses, Lovren, Klein, Lallana. Not too key, but some losses there. First games against Leeds United, and they are at odds of 2.7. Marius, how are you feeling going into this season?
Well, I'm feeling pretty good overall. We haven't really made any big signings this summer and seem to be pretty reluctant to buy players unless we sell players first. But the good thing is that the transfer window will be open until October, so there's still plenty of time to sort of get the affairs settled and hopefully get in some reinforcements. But then again, at this stage, it is pretty hard to reinforce this Liverpool team. Obviously, I was very warm on us getting Timo Werner earlier this year, and I was pretty sure that was going to happen, but then COVID happened and he went on to Chelsea instead, so that was a bit disappointing because I think he's a phenomenal player who's going to be absolutely fantastic at Chelsea. But for Liverpool, what they could use is sort of a backup centre-back just in case Gomez and Matip or Van Dijk get injured. So it's good to have a backup there, but I guess that Klopp's main view is that if he can't really find anyone who is suitable to add, then Fabinho can play centre-back and we have enough central midfielders to get through no matter how one looks at it. It's also going to be very interesting to see how the whole Thiago Alcantara signing is going to play out. My guess is that he won't be joining unless Wijnaldum is leaving. And I think a likely scenario might be that Gini goes next summer when his contract expires, and then Thiago joins. But I guess we'll just have to see how that plays out. And overall, like, the team is strong. One could be vulnerable if Salah or Mane or Firmino gets an injury, because there is a bit of a drop-off in quality to like the second options. But yeah, Liverpool have the best fitness team around and an incredibly strong team. So I reckon they'll be at it again as soon as the season starts and churning out wins.
I think that's where you were very kind of, I'd say fortunate might be the wrong word, but you didn't really have any injuries to speak of, any serious injuries last season. So you might have had the odd one here and there, missed a few games. I think obviously Alisson, was he suspended? I think I'm right in saying that, so he was gone for a bit. But overall, your key players were available more often than not. So you always had that strong nucleus to rely on, I think. So it'd be interesting, because I completely agree with you, you're such a strong team in terms of the way they are. But it'd be interesting to see how they do cope if they do lose, say, one or two key players through injury. Obviously, naturally, being a City fan, I'm going to be biased and say we were very unfortunate with injuries. We lost Laporte, who's obviously massive. Everyone knows how bad City's defending is anyway. So to lose a man of obviously Laporte's stature, but no, obviously Van Dijk, he completely transforms your team. So for example, if he was out for an extended period of time, it would be interesting to kind of see how they kind of deal with that. But with your signings, that kind of thing, I'm very surprised that you've not sort of gone out, whilst you're on top, trying to strengthen, because the old saying goes, if you're not improving, you're going backwards. So, and obviously everyone around you, so ourselves, Chelsea, they're all spending money trying to improve their side, and I'm slightly bewildered as to why Liverpool haven't quite done that yet. Because I know you signed Tsimikas, but it doesn't scream out like it doesn't send a message to the diary-robbers like, they're serious about this. No, exactly, that's it. So, and for example, Thiago, I think Bayern were holding up for 30 million? Yes, his injury record isn't great, but when he plays, he's such a good midfielder. He's one of the world's best. So for 30 million, I'm very surprised that Klopp's not, that's a great deal, let's get that done straight away. It's very much a one out, one in kind of environment there. I'm slightly baffled by that, as I know there's not necessarily too many players out there, but it does surprise me that Liverpool haven't been, they may well be, as you said, it's early on in the window, but so far other clubs have got a lot of business done. So I'm very surprised to see Liverpool kind of hanging back in terms of bringing people in.
I think one needs to sort of, it's difficult to say without looking directly at the accounting of what their books are looking like, but we have tied up all of our stars on 3 to 5 year contracts, so they're all going to be there until Klopp resigns in 2023 or something. So the club has already invested a lot of money into just keeping hold of their best players, while in the past they would have had to sell them to Barcelona, like we did with Coutinho, or Sterling to Manchester City, which was a great loss for us, and then keep on rebuilding. So that's one thing, and then every single Premier League team has to pay back £20 million to the TV companies because of COVID. And at least in Liverpool's case, for every single Premier League game they play without fans in the stadium, they're losing £3 million. So I think it's a matter of just being a bit careful with the money. I think they do have some money in the account, they could spend it, but just they want to be sure that they don't put the club in a position where they could dig themselves into a bit of a hole and then need to sell players to recover later on. And it's just a bit of uncertainty now with the whole COVID situation, because you could end up needing to postpone the season again, or pause it, or even cancel it this time around. So I think they're just being careful. And then the clubs that have been spending big, Chelsea, they made almost 150 million on selling Hazard and Morata last year. Because of the transfer ban, they didn't really spend any money, so they have some money stored up, plus the backing of Abramovich. City obviously have phenomenal financial backing, so they can spend pretty much how much money they want. And it's also a matter with how clubs do accounting on transfers, because you amortize, I think I pronounced that correctly, amortize the transfer fee over the length of the player's contract. And at least City have reported, I think it was 100 million profit since 2016 with regards to FFP. Yeah. So if you then amortize, let's say you buy for 300 million and amortize that over 5 years, you're still going to be net positive with regards to FFP. So besides those, not too many clubs have spent very big. There's been the odd signing here and there, Leeds putting down, I think it was close to 30 million for Rodrigo, and Crystal Palace, they brought Eze from QPR. So there's been some signings, but not a lot of clubs have been splashing money this window. Besides,
only really Chelsea. They're kind of the anomaly, aren't they?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I think like as you guys say as well. But also Liverpool's. I mean, the last few years at least, it's kind of been quality over quantity. So it's kind of if there's a player out there, they will spend big. They bought Van Dijk. They bought a few others for that kind of price tag, rather than just kind of filling out the squad, as well as the kind of current financial situation. I think if they get Thiago, I think that would be a fantastic signing. I think that would really, really push them forward. I mean, they've kind of, they've won it at the canter without really having a midfield, not kind of conventional midfield. So again, I think they're kind of just very well stocked. Robertson and Trent, they're only going to get better. They're only improving. You've got a really solid spine there. And again, with Klopp, it's not generally his modus operandi to again kind of spend big. He likes to improve the players he has around him and develop them. As much, I have lots of annoying friends who are Liverpool fans, but I can't see past them. This year I think they are just going to be strong. Again, it would be interesting to see, like George said, if Van Dijk got injured, how they'd cope with it. But they might still have enough.
Yeah, that's cool. My biggest thing. I want to play devil's advocate for Marius here, because I'm not. I was thinking Liverpool a few weeks ago, but I think this new season's just going to pose so many different barriers for a side like Liverpool because of the depth of their squad. So, I mean, for one, after the COVID break, they got smashed up by City. They've been beaten by Arsenal twice, the great Arsenal. I think I'm just not sure they have I think if it was a normal season, maybe I'd look at Liverpool a bit more favourably, but it doesn't seem like they perform that well ever since COVID's come, and they don't have the squad depth for me.
Well, it's an interesting fact. I think since February, Jurgen Klopp's had a 48% win rate with Liverpool. You could argue, right, well, they knew they were going to win the title pretty much then. So performances kind of come down slightly. You could argue that. I'm just kind of looking at it in terms of their squad as well as quite bare. I don't fancy Liverpool for the title again this season. Also, when you think only one team since I think it's 2008 has won the title back to back, and yeah, that was City. But obviously, in trying to again sort of not be like, oh, City are great, but there's the difference.
Exactly what you were difficult.
That's how I feel, obviously. But no, but the squads, the squad depth that City have in comparison to Liverpool's is in stark contrast. Liverpool's first team is excellent, it's fantastic, but as soon as a couple of key players drop out, and as you said, the players that then come into it aren't anywhere near as good as those players. So I think it'll be testing. I don't think Liverpool will win it again this season. That's my early prediction. I think we'll see a different winner this season.
Marius?
Yeah, sure. So I guess I can sort of touch upon the injury aspect first, and then go step by step from there.
Could you speak a little bit to Salah's form too? Because every time I've watched him the last couple of months, he looks very off the pace, in my opinion.
I mean, if you're referring to the game recently and some preseason games now, then I mean, he's still doing double workouts every single day and getting into shape. I listened to a bit of a digression, but I listened to a Calm episode with LeBron James, and it was about him working out during preseason at Camp Nou because he was visiting Barcelona. And as he was working out on the grass field, his one of his colleagues from the NBA walked past him and said, "Hey, LeBron, looks like you're working out pretty hard for the season." And he was like, "I'm working out for the playoffs." So I sort of think it's the sort of same thing with Liverpool's players and fitness. Like every single time they've needed to be in great shape, Klopp has gotten them there, and I think they're going to be pretty fit and ready to roll as soon as the regular season starts now. So not too worried about Salah's form or anything like that. And when it comes to injuries, because that was the point I was addressing, it's that Liverpool, they got I think they will have, with that smaller squad, will have benefited massively from having that 3-month break due to COVID. Because a player like Mane played football games, like 50 weeks in a row last year, before finally getting that COVID break. So I think they are going to be one of the teams that will benefit from their players having less of a fatigue load over like the last 365 days compared to some of the other teams, which should help with fewer injuries in general. And second, Liverpool luckily didn't have any Champions League and stuff to contend with after the Premier League season ended, so they got a nice break, while some of the other teams like Manchester City had a couple of extra games, and United went to the semi-finals in the Europa League. Chelsea only had one game, but still, like a couple of weeks gets torn off the preseason and a couple of weeks less rest for the players. And that might very well be the difference between picking up a hamstring injury and not doing so. So, yeah.
Well, City may well not have bothered having that extra game in the Champions League, just saying that. But
Yeah,
exactly. All right, fellas, I reckon that's enough for Liverpool. If we spend that amount of time on every team,
sure.
we'll be here all year.
That's fine.
Let's move along to Manchester City. Second last year. Over the summer, during the summer so far, they've signed Nathan Ake from Bournemouth, Ferran Torres, and key losses, big losses, you would have to say, Sane and Silva. But then the caveat could be the potential, which would just be an incredible, amazing inclusion of Lionel Messi. First game, Aston Villa, title odds, they are favourites, 1.625. These odds are with Pinnacle, by the way. But yeah, George, what do you think? You said a bit about City so far, but how are you feeling going into the new season?
I'm feeling quietly confident, I have to say. I mean, it's difficult because last season, we weren't at the races at all. I've mentioned obviously injuries, but I think there's a few other things as well. We slipped up far too often. Because the season before last we won the title, we finished with 98 points, and then last season we finished with 81. So we've dropped 17 points from somewhere, which isn't good enough. Simple as that. So you could argue that's why we've obviously missed Laporte for a while. So brought in the likes of Nathan Ake. I think Nathan Ake could be an astute signing. I know people have said, but he got relegated. But the thing is, obviously, he had the ghost goal for Sheffield United against Villa gone in, it would be Villa that's gone down, and Bournemouth would have just about stayed up. And when you could argue I'm sort of looking into things too much, but that's what I do. But when Liverpool signed Van Dijk from Southampton, they stayed literally one place above the relegation zone when Van Dijk was playing Southampton, so they could have been relegated as well. And we all see what Van Dijk's gone on to do. I'm not for one moment saying that Nathan Ake is going to be as good as Van Dijk. That's not what I'm saying, but he could be very astute in the fact he's not made any errors leading to a goal in Premier League football in 3 years. And that's something we need because we're constantly making mistakes at the back all the time. So someone of that calibre with that kind of stat behind them, obviously he's left-footed as well, which is a bonus. So and he's a threat in the box in terms of his aerial ability. So I think it could prove to be a very good signing. Yes, the price tag could be a little bit high, but who isn't a bit too much money nowadays? It just seems to be the way. And also you get City tax. They know in terms of how much money we've got, so they're going to add a little bit more on. It's always the way. I'm excited about Ferran Torres. A lot of City fans didn't like it because he opted to take the same number that David Silva had worn, number 21. So they weren't sure about that. But for me, I think that shows tremendous kind of confidence in your own ability and the desire to do well. Because he even came out and said they're big boots to fill. But I looked up to him and this is the one I want, and I'm going to hopefully do similar things. So that speaks volumes about where he sees himself. So I think he's an excellent addition as well. In terms of the key losses, we didn't have Sane all of last season anyway through injury. So we've had a season to get used to the idea of not having him in the side. Obviously now he's gone. David Silva, absolute legend of the club. I'm still gutted to have seen him gone, to be honest. It seems weird to see him in another club shirt, but yeah, no, that is what it is. But I think we'll have learnt a lot from this season, though. Liverpool were deserved winners. There's no doubt about that. I think you'd be an idiot if you thought Liverpool didn't deserve to win it. But I think Pep, he'll be the first one to say you're always learning. But, obviously in the Champions League against Lyon, the fact that he's so clever was his downfall because he overthought every single aspect. I think we touched on it on a previous podcast about how he's just overthought everything so much, changed the type of football that got us to that position in the first place for Lyon. Whereas in an elite competition like that, you need that arrogance to say, well, no, we're better than you in the way that we play, so come and beat us at our own game. And we didn't do that. So I think we'll have learned an awful lot from last season going into this new season. I mean, I'll always back City to say we're going to win the league, but with this one, a few additions that we've made, obviously with potential additions that we're going to make, I'd have to say you've got to have City favourites, surely. But yeah, if we sign Lionel Messi, I'll probably be on the Raz for a while, so I might not be available. But but yeah, it'd be phenomenal. See if that comes off. But I'm holding out a bit of hope. Again, I think we touched on it just before we started. Part of me still sees the Messi signs 2-year contract extension just to come up, and this will all have been for nothing. Part of me is still expecting to see that. But no, if he rocks up at the Etihad, leaving the sunny climes of Barcelona for Manchester, I'll be insanely happy.
Do you think you could? Oh, sorry, go Neil.
Yeah, that would be incredible. If you did sign, I think that makes a difference. I mean, just for me, I'm just looking at it in terms of prices. If we're saying Man City are 1.6 to win, I'm not taking that. I mean, it very well could happen. It could be close. I mean, something I was reading up on. I mean, everyone says Liverpool were deserved winners, but they went on an incredible run. They did have a little bit of luck, going their way in terms of results, in terms of kind of last minute goals. I mean, you make your own luck as well. But I think there was a stat in terms of Man City's XG, which was, really high. They should have scored, even though they scored a lot of goals, they should have scored a lot more. How much you read into something like that, it's kind of debatable, but that'll be interesting. I think with Silva going, it's another character in the dressing room. I think they haven't, Company leaving was actually, like a big, although, he didn't play a lot of the time, but that was huge. Silva was kind of another experienced head. Aguero, I don't think he barely speaks English really, but I don't know how useful that is in the dressing room.
He speaks a little bit, but
apparently he can say goal.
I've heard him say "don't shoot." That's about all I've ever heard.
Who's he saying that to? Gabriel Jesus?
No, it was Company when he smashed it in against Leicester.
I think it'll be a big season for Sterling, just in terms of I think he's at that age now. He's got to pick up that kind of leadership role, and be more vocal, and really kind of step up from here. I mean, I don't know. Obviously, as a City fan, I mean, I was watching the Lyon game, and I was it was a little bit amusing, but at the same time, I can imagine being a City fan, just how frustrating that was. Kind of a golden opportunity. And I just think, I don't know if that will kind of hang over into new season, but it could work out the other way. It could be that kind of Guardiola becomes sort of relentless, and and City kind of almost try and banish that ghost by just smashing as many goals as they can. So again, I kind of agree with them, but just in terms of if I was to put a bet on it, I just at 1.6, I still think Liverpool, they've got that monkey off their back now, and I think just the lift that will give them, just the way they're able to grind out results. Whereas City, just there's games where they've had 20 shots on target, they should be 5-0 up, and just it hasn't happened. Whereas Liverpool, 1 shot, 1 goal. It just, the amount of time it happens is ridiculous. So. Yeah, I'm not sure on that one.
Oh, it's frustrating being a City fan when you see stats like that, but it's almost like with amongst City fans, this kind of that typical City tagline. We're one of the best teams at snatching defeat from the jaws of victory. Like we're just one of those sides, and it seems to often transfer into Europe as well. But no, I mean, that was extra frustrating watching that Lyon game because I wasn't even able to properly watch it. I had to go to a birthday meal, so I'm sat there in a restaurant. We're meant to be all happy and watching City just perform abysmally. It wasn't my best night, put it that way. But no, I think you're right in terms of it, it could, I think, spur us on slightly, no pun intended. But yeah, I think it could really make the season a good one for us in terms of we won't want to go through that again. As I said before, a lot of lessons will have been learnt. So I think it'd be good for us with that, in terms of our season. I think we'll do well. I agree with you in terms of I wouldn't put a bet on City to win, not at that price. There's absolutely no value in that price whatsoever, considering the quality of the other teams that, are amongst, in for that 5 winning the title. So in terms of prices, I wouldn't touch City to win it. It's just offering absolutely no value at all. But, such as Liverpool and Chelsea, they're okay prices for that sort of thing. So if I was to have a bet on something of that nature, I'd probably be looking more at those two.
And speaking about what we've been talking about, squad rotation too, George, there's none more important man in your side than Kevin De Bruyne, and he has, maybe not last season, but seasons in past, he's been very injury prone. How important do you think that is for Pep Guardiola? Because in my opinion, if he doesn't get that right, that could be the reason you don't win the title.
Absolutely.
Especially if Messi doesn't come.
Yeah, even more so then. 'Cause it's no secret, Kevin De Bruyne obviously is our best player. You could argue he's probably one of the best, if not the best midfielder in Europe at this moment. And he is integral to how well that we do. Just some of the passes he finds, I don't know. You don't see them yourself, and he just manages to pick them out. In terms of the rotation, Pep's very good at rotation. He's one of the strongest managers in terms of making sure that A, everyone gets enough game time, but B, people get enough rest. But obviously you still rely on your main men, so it's kind of in sort of cup competitions or games against, with all due respect, lesser opponents. A lot of the time you won't see Kevin De Bruyne start. He might come on if we're either chasing the game or just to keep him sharp. But Pep is quite good at that, and I have faith in him that he'll be able to manage that, because he knows better than anyone how important Kevin De Bruyne is to his side. So, but rotation is very important. But the only problem is when you don't have Kevin De Bruyne on your side, we do seem to lose a bit of that fluidity. We always play the same way, but sometimes Kevin De Bruyne is the one who can play that killer pass that no one has seen and that you can't really defend against. So it's trying to balance it up of giving him that rest, but using him as and when that's needed, really. But no, I'd back Pep to be able to manage that appropriately, though. And also, as we've said before, the transfer window isn't over yet, so you could potentially see more people come in. But also, it's another season for Phil Foden to show what he's got. And after seeing some of the games of him last season, obviously I followed him a fair amount during the youth team as well. He's also got that ability to pick out a killer pass. He's a bit more like David Silva in the way that he moves. So he's not got that burst of power and speed like Kevin De Bruyne has, but he can still thread some unbelievable balls through. So it depends what kind of football we're playing. But we've got more than one player that's capable of picking that out. So should he not play, we'd still should have far too much quality, really, you'd think.
Are you expecting him to be a regular starter now this season? Is he going to be getting that game time?
I think now that Silva's gone, I think we'll see much more of him. Obviously, before last season, he got, I think, like maybe 5 or 6 appearances, and everyone was saying, he needs to go out on loan, this, that and the other. But for me, obviously, he was in the best place he could be, learning from the likes of Silva and De Bruyne. And then last season, obviously had even more appearances, scoring vital goals in the Champions League and the league as well. So I think this season, especially now that Silva's gone, I think we'll see much, much more of Phil Foden, and I think he'll be a mainstay in the first team, yeah.
What's your view on the Aguero-Gabriel Jesus? Do you think Aguero's going to be fit enough to stay on the pitch? If he isn't, is Jesus good enough to cover for him, or is it going to be Sterling who takes up a striking position?
Well, I feel like it's very popular to jump on Jesus' back in terms of, but he's never going to replace Aguero. Aguero is, he's probably the best foreign striker, arguably that we've seen in the Premier League in terms of the goals that he scored.
Sorry.
No, it's still Aguero. But I did say arguably. But but no, so Aguero, he's always had problems with injuries. At some point in the season, he will always be injured and we'll be without him for a while. But then we still break goal scoring records. So I think Jesus has been vital for us in so many games, particularly in the Champions League. I think he scored in both legs against Madrid. He's a class act and he's a very good striker, and also what he brings to the team in a similar manner that Liverpool fans will say, Firmino doesn't score goals, but it's what else he brings to the team. He brings Salah and Mane in and all of that. Jesus is the same in that I've never seen anyone press like Gabriel Jesus. His pressing ability is phenomenal, and it's largely thanks to him a lot of the time that we do win back possession, because he's exceptional at that. I really like Gabriel Jesus. I don't know if he's gonna ever reach the heights of Aguero in terms of goal scoring ability, but I'd be comfortable having him start. Say if Aguero was injured, I'd happily have Jesus in my squad, and it's starting for the team for a long duration. But there's been links with Lautaro Martinez as well. Lautaro Martinez is nice to sort of think of him. He's great. He's Argentinian striker, just fits the profile, so everyone automatically thinks he's great. He's been very good for Inter Milan, but there are some games that I've seen, so I tried to watch a bit more of him this season to kind of get an idea of more about him. And there are a lot of games he goes missing and doesn't do a lot, to be honest. So he's only young, so we'll see how that goes. But Gabriel Jesus, whenever he plays, he delivers, whether that be for the team, pressing, winning the ball back, or scoring. So I really like Gabriel Jesus, to be honest. So if Aguero's injured, I'd be more than confident in him. But no one can replace a fit Aguero.
All right, we need to shut you up now, George. Enough about Manchester City. Now, this is my favourite part of the podcast because there is absolutely no one here that supports Manchester United. So we can just absolutely go to town, fellas. Key signings. They're not really a signing, but he's come back. Henderson, the goalkeeper from Sheffield. Very interesting battle in their goalkeeping position. I don't think it's been announced yet, but it sounds like they've signed Van der Beek from Ajax. So that's another big signing. Not really any losses notable so far, even though if someone did, leave, it wouldn't be key anyway. There's not many great players at United. Title odds 11 at Pinnacle, and Pinnacle aren't offering any odds on top 4 at the moment, but I think I found a Bet365. They're at 1.4 to make the top 4. Why don't we start with you, Marius? You've always got lots to say about Manchester United. What do you make of? It's probably the best question to ask you to start off with. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer being Norwegian. What do you think? It sounds like he's got his job pretty safe at the moment, but all the start of last season, it was he's got to go.
It has been suspended.
What was that?
Sorry, that was my fair. Edit that out.
Yeah. Oh god, I thought you were adding some kind of sound effect to what I was saying. I was like, thanks, mate. Adding a few effects in, but Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. What do you think of him at the moment? Do you think he's a long-term prospect for Manchester United, Marius?
Yeah, so I have to say I was incredibly impressed with them managing to capture that Champions League spot last year. I think if Leicester hadn't stumbled, it could have been more tricky, but then again, they did finish above Chelsea in the end, so they deserved their spot, and it was an incredible run that brought them there. So far, they haven't really done too much wrong under his management. Like, their signings are all starting to make sense again. And if you do that over time with the amount of money that Manchester United have to spend at players, then you are going to end up with a pretty good team. I don't think that he is anywhere near the level of Klopp and Guardiola in terms of coaching. So, in my view, they're going to reach a limit at some point that he's just not going to be able to punch through. And at that stage, they will need to try and find the next Klopp or Guardiola. But I am very confident about their opportunities to make the top 4 this year, because they showed some tremendous form last year, and they have some very, very good players in the team now with Fernandes, and Rashford is great. Martial has been scoring goals, and Greenwood looks extremely promising. Pogba is good when he's on the pitch, and I think it's a good team. They're gonna do well.
Yeah, for me, their squad will be interesting too, because I think they got found out a little bit at the back end of the COVID break, because Ole just kept playing the same team over and over. And although it's a pretty strong starting 11, the only real weakness, the weakest point, if that makes sense, would be in their defence. I think that's something that they haven't addressed yet in the window, but they seriously need to. And maybe there's an argument there that they need to address De Gea, whether he is replaced by Henderson or not. But yeah, I don't know. For me, I think they'll score lots of goals, and the good thing about the Van der Beek signing is that it gives Fernandes a little bit more rest, because he was just played throughout that COVID break. So, sorry, the break after the return after COVID. So yeah, for me, I don't really like their odds. I think there's absolutely no value in either of winning the title or 1.4 at the place. But I think it'll be really interesting to see if they make any signings in defence, because if they get a few injuries, I really don't rate their B team. If some of the likes coming through, your Pereiras and these people that might jump into the midfield if they get a few injuries, and some of the guys in defence there too. I don't really rate their chances too highly if they get a few injuries to key players. Yeah,
no, I'd agree with that. I mean, personally, it's just a habit. I can't help but try and look at their relegation odds just out of hope more than anything. But Yeah, I don't know with United. I mean, I came back yesterday and I was listening on the radio, and it must have been at least the 10th time I've heard it over the course of the past few years. But could this be the signing that unlocks Pogba? How many signings do they need to make before Pogba gets unlocked? Like, I don't understand
10.
it.
They probably need 10, full first 11 of the world's best players or something.
It's just ridiculous. It is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, Pogba's great when he plays, but then he does have some games where it looks as if, that kind of attitude of, I'm just going to turn up, I know that I'm better, and it just seems to be he's got that kind of. It might just be me reading too much into it, but that's what I get from looking at him. But sometimes some of the things he does are absolutely majestic and brilliant, and then other times it's like Sunday League. It's they're poles apart sometimes his performances, but anyway, bias aside and sort of rivalry aside, I have watched them at times and thought, wow, they play some excellent football, but occasionally they seem to struggle. Like, for example, I think what personifies that was when they played against Sevilla. How they didn't win that game, I will never know. The amount of chances they had, similar to what we said about City earlier, you can have chance after chance after chance and they don't score. And that could come back to bite them. And particularly, like you said, if they do get some injuries, some of the players they've got coming into this side, are nowhere near as good as the players they've already got in there. But the sign, obviously giving Henderson another contract, again, it's good. I think it is good in terms of providing a proper challenge to De Gea, because we know Henderson's hungry for that spot, so it might improve De Gea's form. But I think someone said that United are paying £500,000 a week just on their goalkeeper's wages, which is insane. Absolutely insane. I know, ironic considering I'm a City fan, but still, it's quite mental. But I think they'll get top four this season. But I agree with Marius in terms of Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. I've spoken to a few United friends of mine, and they kind of say the same thing. It will get to a point when Solskjaer's taken them kind of as far as they can go. I think you need someone else to be able to take them into that next step. But what he's doing so far, you can't knock it, so you can't get rid of him early doors. He's doing well. There's a clear idea of what they're trying to do. As we said, the signings are making sense. So you've got to give him that time and see where his ceiling is, really. So it'll be interesting to see how they do.
Do you guys not think that they should act now with Ollie, though? Like, I think that he's gotten them to that point now. I don't think they can get much better than they've gotten as we speak right now, because I was watching them after the break and they looked superb. Greenwood, Rashford, Fernandes, obviously. Greenwood could really be the next big thing. And watching the way that, he was combining with Fernandes and Martial and Rashford, was the first time under Ole that I thought, geez, they're looking very good. But I really don't see how he takes them to the next level, because let's be honest, Ole was under so much pressure, and the only thing I think that got him through the rest of the season was Fernandes. I think that was, how much can you look into that and say, was it the coach or was it just one signing? And obviously he needs to bring in players that are quality, but maybe I feel like, I could be very wrong here, but I feel like Fernandes saved Ole's job.
I'd agree somewhat, but if you can't get rid of him now, what kind of message does that send out to any other prospective manager coming in? But also, it's almost like saying, well, thank you for what you've done so far, but you're not good enough for us. Now you've got us here, we want to do something. You can't do it now. I think you've got to give them another season at least. If they're not performing, then absolutely get rid of him. But I think if you got rid of him now, there'd be uproar from both fans and media and everyone alike because of what he's done so far.
Definitely now. But I'm probably speaking back months ago. I would have if I was in charge, which obviously I shouldn't be. I thought he should have gone 6 months ago, or maybe even earlier than that. Oh no,
because I wasn't sure if you said, would you not act now and sort of get something sorted rather than waiting for him to hit that ceiling? But I agree with Fernandes though. I think he did. His signing was huge for them, and I think had that not have gone through, we could be having a very different conversation. But ultimately, that's why you sign these players, to make this impact for your team. So, for me, I think Solskjaer's got at least another year, but I also agree that he's got a ceiling, and I think they'll be looking for someone else. Wouldn't surprise me if eventually someone of, like Nagelsmann from Leipzig went there eventually, as the next Klopp or Guardiola in terms of the way they play football and the ideas that he's got, something of that stature. But I don't see Solskjaer there for the long term.
No. I think a lot of people, I personally think kind of Solskjaer comes in for quite harsh treatment sometimes. yeah, again, the problem with United is just consistency. But they picked up some good scalps. I think he's more tactically aware than a lot of people give credit for. Times I've watched them where actually, they have impressed me. And again, with Fernandes, you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. If you sign a player like that and they hit the ground running like he has, you don't necessarily get the credit as a coach. Who I don't, I'm not privy to what they do on the training ground, but they're just a very dangerous side on their day. I just think, just on any given occasion, this United side, they can get a result. They can make life difficult for you. Problem they have is just they're kind of set up to be a kind of quick counter-attacking team. So that, again, they struggle to break down opponents. I think in the Europa League, they were just exhausted. I think they did, they took forever in that Copenhagen game. And I think they were still leggy from that. They had a 10-minute spell where they just had an absolute barrage and should have scored against Sevilla. They should have won that game, but they didn't. So again, it's just unfortunate, really. But it'd be interesting to see, what Van de Beek does. What he adds to that team. That defense is suspect. But I think just the kind of attacking quality they have. I think just with kind of Greenwood emerging. With Rashford, with Fernandes on their day, they're very capable. This year, I think is quite wide open for that. They had that the momentum to carry them over the line. Who knows how they kind of start off. I haven't had a proper look at the opening fixtures, but maybe more than ever, especially with COVID, with again no fans in the stadiums and things like that. One of these teams, if they get off to a bad start, will make life quite difficult. I think that's key for Ollie as well. But I'm a massive Fernandes fan. Every time I watch him, he's vocal. United fans that I know, this is kind of high praise, but they said that it's the best signing they've made since Cantona. In terms of impact to the club, potentially what he could do. Time will tell. But at least what he's done so far has been quite impressive.
Yep, good stuff, mate. All right, we'll move on to Chelsea then, fellas. Finished 4th last year, qualifying for the Champions League spot under Lampard. Sorry, and very interesting that all the talk was last year. Oh, we've got to play the youngsters. Poor us. We've got a transfer ban, but we're so good. We're going to play our youngsters. We're going to blood them all through. And then as soon as our ban's over, we'll keep playing the youngsters probably, of course. But no. Doesn't seem like that at all. They've been by far the biggest spending club so far in the summer. Some of their signings are pretty ridiculous. Timo Werner, Hakim Ziyech, Ben Chilwell, Thiago Silva, Kai Havertz will be announced in the coming days. And they've lost a few golden oldies, Willian and Pedro, which of course Arsenal picked up Willian, a golden oldie. First game is against Brighton. I think their odds are quite good. Just personally, title odds at 13 at Pinnacle and 1.53 to come in the top 4 at Bet365. I don't know who to go to on this one. I'll start with you, Neil, mate. Being as apparently, I heard it was Dele Alli. He said Arsenal aren't our main rivals anymore. Chelsea are. So considering that, you must know quite a bit about Chelsea. What are your thoughts on their signings so far, and do you think they've covered all bases at the moment?
I'm looking at their signings, and they're going to be great fun to watch. That's for sure. Some really interesting signings, but I don't think they've solved their problems from last year. I think, my bet is actually again to lay them for the top 4. I think. They conceded 54, 55 goals last year. I think that was their highest since the mid 90s. They're leaking goals, and they've got Silva. Oh, by the way, I have to thank George for his tip for Silva to get booked.
You're more than welcome.
So I made a nice bet, so thank you for that. But
that'll feed the kid, mate.
And coming into the Premier League at 36, when he's been used to this the Farmers League, for quite a while. He's going to be tested. Again, Chelsea play this kind of aggressive attacking football. They're going to be exposed at times. He might be, have quite a few one-on-ones. So it'll be interesting to see how he does. Maybe he'll have an impact. I think, when like Laurent Blanc came to Man United, just that kind of that calm presence at the back. But I just think they're too top heavy. I think they're going to score lots of goals and they're going to try and outscore the opposition. But and even in terms of Frank Lampard's, I'm still kind of undecided really on in terms of what he's done. How he set the team up. I mean, Bayern made everyone look silly this year, but again, could there have been something he could have done in those games? And it'll be interesting to see. There's no guarantee that Werner will hit the ground running. He might need a little bit of time to settle, and the same with Havertz as well. I think Hakim Ziyech is a great signing. Actually, I'm a big fan of his. I think he'll make a difference. So they'll kind of absorb that loss of Willian and Pedro. I was a bit surprised they let Willian go. I think he's actually a great signing for the Gooners. But I think for me, I think there's value in actually opposing them for the top four. I think they might just get kind of stung at the back a few times and just kind of let in a few careless goals. That's a big job for Lampard. I haven't really seen that. And again, with Kepa as well. That's a huge problem to kind of come into the end of the season and have this kind of keeper that you don't really fully trust. That whole defensive unit is there's a lot of question marks there.
They might get off to a very slow start if you think about it, just on the fact that if Lampard does play all these new signings at once, they will never have played together. So there might be a bit of, they won't be able to collaborate as best as possible. And also, none of them, or at least only one of them here, Chilwell, has played EPL football in the Premier League. So, if they don't adapt, that's a lot of money wasted. And it'll be very interesting to see how they go. But I agree with you, Neil. They haven't addressed their biggest concern, in my opinion. Silva, 36 years old. I don't think he's going to make that much of an impact. Chilwell, I don't know how much a left back can impact your defence.
Most overrated left back going.
Yeah, and there's that too. So, I see, when I look at them, I see the Arsenal side from maybe 3-4 years ago when we had Sanchez, Ozil. No, I wouldn't include Giroud in the conversation because I didn't think he was ever that great. But
they're becoming an Arsenal retirement home, aren't they? They've got Giroud.
Yeah, well, there's that too. But I see them they put all their efforts into buying attack, and probably just trying to play beautiful football. Yeah, and I'm a little bit unsure about Lampard also. I do think he's a good coach, but I'm not sure if he's a great coach. I don't think he's obviously not up to the likes of Klopp and Guardiola, but I question whether he could ever get there at the moment. I'm not too sure.
I mean, obviously it's interesting. I know they've obviously spent a lot of money, but saying that as well, the loans have just expired, and I think for Morata at Atletico, and I think they got around 50 odd million for him there. As well as Pasalic at Atalanta, they've got around, I think it's 15 million. So, they've got at least, I'd say, 60 odd million coming back in. Obviously, if they sign Havertz, then I think their transfer overall, the net spend is around 140. So, but as we've already covered, they've had plenty of time, to be able to comply, as it were. They've not spent a lot of money. I really like some of the signings. I mean, Chilwell, I really don't rate Chilwell at all. And I thought, 50 million for him was, City got blasted for spending, obviously, 50 million on their fullbacks, but you could see why they did it. I don't really see it with Chilwell. He's not very defensive. The amount of times I've watched him, and you can see an opponent, a right winger, flying down the wing, just no one opposing him, as Chilwell's dawdling back. And it's not just once or twice. It happened on a number of occasions. So I think I don't like Chilwell as a signing for Chelsea. I've always been a Thiago Silva fan. Love him regardless of how old he is. I just think his pure aggression, his tenacity, and the way he plays. I'm going to have to disagree, and I think he'll be a success regardless of how old he is. I think he'll do well because he's got that physicality. He enjoys that side of the game. So that's my reason as to why I think he'll do well. But yeah, I think if they sign Havertz, though, I think that could be a bit of a game changer. again, it all does come down to if they gel completely. But you've got Timo Werner, who was the second top goal scorer in the Bundesliga last season, just behind Lewandowski, natural finisher, which you could argue is something Chelsea have lacked. Yes, they've got Giroud, but so I'd say they haven't had a proper natural out-and-out goal scorer probably since Drogba. Diego Costa just loved getting more. He loved more scrapping than anything. That was more his game, if you like. But
in position for them for a while, hasn't it? They've had so many strikers come through the club.
Absolutely. And I think Werner's a really astute signing. Everyone obviously thought he was going to Liverpool, and they've done really well to get him. I'm excited about watching Chelsea, even as obviously an opposing fan. I'm really excited to watch how they do, particularly Werner. I think he'll be a success. I'd have Chelsea getting into the top 4 this season with that side. Just Ziyech, as you just mentioned, Neil, fantastic signing, great player. I think they're too good not to get into the top 4, regardless of that. And I see other teams that are worse than them. So I'd have Chelsea get into the top 4 personally. But
and we've talked about this a lot too already. The ability to have a good squad in a time like this, where there's going to be so many games in a short period of time, and they arguably have. I don't know, what would you say? I'd probably say the second best squad in the EPL, just on the fact that Liverpool aren't as deep as Chelsea. Chelsea now, with all these new signings, they've got a pretty deep squad. So, I think that's another interesting point too. You had something to say, Marius?
Yeah, so totally agree on the squad depth. Like, Chelsea is one of those teams where you can pretty much swap any player in any position with the second choice, and it wouldn't be a huge drop-off in quality. And a player, they also missed Antonio Rudiger for like half of the season last year, and he is their best defender. He is pretty injury prone though, so there are absolutely no guarantees that he's going to play more than half the games this year. But when he's playing, he's pretty excellent, and pairing him up with Silva is going to be pretty interesting, I think. There's also rumors that in addition to adding Havertz, they also want to spend big on signing a goalkeeper like Donnarumma or that guy on Atletico, I forget his name, Oblak.
Yeah.
So if they do manage to get like a top goalkeeper too, then it is going to be very interesting to see how far the team can go. I still think this year is going to be too early for them, because as you guys have mentioned, they need to blood a lot of new players at the same time, and I think those things just take time. Klopp seems to have been pretty strict on never putting more than 3 new players into the first team every season, and that's what he's been doing at Liverpool and what he was doing at Dortmund, and it's worked out pretty well for him so far. And I think Chelsea will do good if they try to take things a bit slowly, like they also did with Pulisic last year with the new signings.
Yep. All right, we're interested to see how they go, Chelsea. And I guess in terms of predictions and our future predictions, future bet predictions, we'll get to that at the end. But some interesting odds there for Chelsea, I believe. We'll move on to Tottenham. Neil, your side, mate. Key signings. I'll have a crack at pronouncing it. Holgeberg. I tried.
Højbjerg.
Oh God, yeah, not even close. From Southampton. The legendary Joe Hart, Matt Doherty, as me and George were talking about before the podcast started, one of the greatest announcement videos of all time. Key losses, Kyle Walker-Peters and Vertonghen gone. First game, big game, tough game against Everton. Should be interesting. Title odds, a huge 51 and 4 in odds to get the place at Bet365. What do you make of Mourinho? I think the biggest thing for me, I'd love to find out from you, mate, is Mourinho's start to time at Spurs.
Where do I start? It's a strange time, I think, being a Spurs fan. He is pretty much Marmite to a lot of Spurs fans. Mostly there's just kind of outright hate from most Spurs fans I know. But I actually, when the appointment was made, obviously I didn't want Poch to go, but at the same time, it was kind of a statement. I think with Mourinho, it was kind of a statement that if you get Mourinho is not going to work on a shoestring budget. So actually, maybe Levy, maybe Joe Lewis, maybe the owners will actually loosen the purse strings and there'll be some investment. I think COVID's come at an awful time for us as a club, with the new stadium, and we had NFL games booked, and all that kind of lost income. So that's kind of been a big hindrance, and that could actually affect us for the next few years. But love him or hate him, he is a natural born winner. He still has it. I mean, however sort of turgid his teams are to watch, United, they won a Europa League. They got to second in the league without playing particularly good football. And I think again, it's this kind of trade-off. West Ham fans go on about the West Ham way, but what they want, again, at Spurs, we want this kind of attractive football. This is going to be a controversial opinion, maybe for some Spurs fans, but we got to the final of the Champions League, which is a huge overachievement as a club, and I think that's given unrealistic expectations to where we are, what our budget is. But it's going to be difficult. I can't see us getting top four at all this year. But again, our best shot is to take the Europa League seriously and go on a good run. But again, I've seen interesting things, about how he tries to set up his team. I think, his willingness to kind of work with the players we have. He is bringing through players like Tanganga is coming through. I think he's a promising player. And Bergwijn as well, I think has been a great signing. We'll see more of him this year, and he'll be a goal threat. The issue we have is we're just so reliant on Harry Kane, but actually, all the stats suggest that we're a better team without him. And again, is how Mourinho is going to set up there. We need more from Dele Alli this year. He really needs to kind of step up to the plate. But there's, Son's not getting any younger. It's going to be difficult, I think. And I think again, we're going to need a good run of results. We're going to have to be very lucky with injuries, to even kind of challenge that top four. But you never know. I'm not kind of a complete naysayer on Mourinho. I think there are some interesting things he can do. He's still got that hunger. I need to watch the documentary that's come out as well, because a few friends of mine have told me there's some interesting stuff in there, some quite funny moments. I think one of the things he was saying to Serge Aurier was just kind of slagging him off before a game. It's all caught on camera, so that that'll be entertaining. But I mean, I look at our signings, and you guys can see our signings. They're not particularly inspiring. Doherty, it'd be a useful squad addition, but I think our squad is reasonably stacked already. We need that kind of missing piece of the jigsaw. We need that extra bit of quality. Although, to be fair, actually, Lo Celso is officially a signing now, so that counts as a fish transfer. And I really like him. I think he's a really good player. And now he's had some time to settle in England. He can hit the ground running, and he'll be a kind of crucial player for us. So if he comes up with some moments of magic, if Dele Alli, if we have a good season, a bit of luck, you never know. But we just have to see what happens.
What's your opinion of Dele Alli though, in terms of not just his playing style, but because obviously everyone knows kind of what he's like in terms of everyone thinks they know what he's like as a person. I've seen clips from that documentary of what they're talking about, with Dele Alli. Like, as a Spurs fan, what do you kind of make of him? Do you think, he's got attitude, but we need him in the side, or how do you feel about him?
I mean, I find him a frustrating player. I mean, all this kind of stuff, about players, what they're like off the pitch. To be honest, if they're delivering the goods, it doesn't really matter. People might read something into it. It's more that he drifts in and out of games. He kind of relaxed. He had a really promising run, and you kind of thought, okay, right, he's going to get to that top echelon, and it just hasn't quite happened. There's no bad thing, it's not. He's still a very, very good player. He may still have, a very, very good career, but there's that feeling of kind of maybe there is wasted potential, or maybe it's kind of dawning on us. Maybe he's not, as good a player as we thought he would be. But I find myself, again, watching games where I'm waiting for something. I'm waiting for a little bit of magic, a little bit of something special. And he has these sporadic moments of brilliant. Some of the goals he scored, it's been fantastic. But especially with Eriksen gone, I was kind of hoping he might play a bit deeper, take up a bit of that slack. I mean, now we have Lo Celso, he's another player who can kind of find that pass. But it is a kind of, I wouldn't say it's quite Pogba levels, but there is this frustration when I watch him play, that I feel like there could be more, and we're just waiting really.
Yeah, it seems like it's more attitude as opposed to ability, because there's no doubting, that ability's there. I think was that goal against, was it Crystal Palace? It was just sublime. Like, the ability's there. I guess it just comes down to attitude, isn't it? But so it'll be interesting to see if he does come head to head with Mourinho at some point. But even worse.
When Mourinho first signed, there was this kind of footage that I found quite interesting, where he was talking to Mourinho, and they were kind of set aside, and he was having a long talk with him. It was interesting, and I thought, okay, right, he's going to kind of become a pet project, and he started off quite well, So we just have to see this year what happens. I hope so, but being a Spurs fan, I'm used to disappointment, so I won't get my hopes up too.
What's your view on the midfield? Because the Højbjerg signing was very surprising to me. When I look at the squad, you have Ali, who can play there, Sissoko, Lo Celso, Winks, and Dombele, and Fernandes, who was recently signed. So how do you think Mourinho is going to set up that part of it?
Yeah, that'll be interesting. I think we've got a nice kind of variety of options in midfield, I think, which is good. So especially the way Mourinho likes to kind of prepare his teams for battle. So we have different options for different games, and we can rotate. But again, kind of finding that consistent, settled 11. This is the difference. So this is the difference between us and the Liverpools and Cities of this world. This kind of this quality. And having this very stable fixed 11, again, maybe we haven't quite found that. The way we're kind of set up, where we're almost bypassing the midfield, with kind of Son and Lucas, and just kind of that speed on the wings with Bergwijn as well. So we don't really need that control, that kind of those metronomes, in the middle of the park, like maybe other teams. So it will be kind of interesting to see how he sets up, what kind of changes he makes, how flexible he is this year. It's kind of a team in flux at the moment, I think, and there is that uncertainty. Højbjerg will be interesting. I haven't watched him too much, and I don't know if there's kind of attitude problems there as well, just what happened with how he kind of almost pushed for this transfer. Now he's got it, then hopefully it'll be worthwhile.
Who do you see lining up in the back four, mate? Because I would assume that at least under Mourinho, I don't know, there's been quite a decent decline in your defence in the last year, you would have to say, because before, I remember, maybe speaking a year ago, maybe a bit more than that, there was such a great pairing of Alderweireld and Vertonghen. Who do you think will line up in the back four, and how confident are you in that? Anyone's guess really, because even, for example, Danny Rose, there were issues there, before with him, and again, like with Sanchez, sometimes there's a little bit of a liability there. I know I'm having a brain freeze at the moment. The Foyth, with Foyth as well, was very raw, was kind of prone to some errors, but I don't know, again, if there's over time, he's kind of matured a little bit more. So it's anyone's guess. I think Vertonghen was. I'm sad to see him go. I think he was a good servant to the club. I think he was a very useful player. Was a goal threat as well, and I think that's what we had. We had goal threats coming from the back. But yeah, again, like I say, it's kind of hard to say. It's in flux at the moment. All right, mate. Well, why don't we lift the mood, mate? It sounds like that got a bit sad after a while into the sad case of affairs at Spurs. And what better club to uplift all our spirits than the FA Cup, Community Shield, and I would call us the giant killers at the moment, Arsenal, taking down some of the greatest teams in the world. Other than Spurs, that was the only team we couldn't take down in the last couple of months. But yeah, so key signings for Arsenal, Willian, and also Gabriel Magalhaes, like we said earlier. Saliba, who we signed a year ago, but he's back from that after loaning him out to Saint Etienne, still very young, but highly rated centre-back. El Neni comes back from loan too, not really that, big of a signing or inclusion, but he is the best Egyptian in the Premier League, as me and George say. Key losses, I have Ceballos down here, but I think it sounds like he actually is going to come back on loan. So key losses, I think it'll just get really interesting with Arsenal towards the end of the window, because they have a lot of players they want to ship out, but at the moment they don't really have many buyers. Bellerin maybe being the only one at the moment that might go out, and also Holding might go on loan too to Newcastle. First games against Fulham, odds of 41 to win the title at Pinnacle, and 4 in odds to get into the top 4 at Bet365. And interesting enough, I ran a poll on the Trademate Sports Twitter account a little earlier today, asking what was the big value pick for the top 4 market out of Chelsea, Arsenal, Spurs, and other. And by far, Arsenal at 4 in odds was everyone's most popular pick for value to make the top 4, which is very interesting. I'll start with you, George, mate. How do you? I mean, coming from Manchester City, Arteta, what have you made of his electric start at Arsenal?
Well, I have to say, a part of me wanted him to get the job, not because I wanted him to leave City, because I really like him, really liked him as a assistant manager. Obviously, we've already mentioned the documentaries, because obviously the All or Nothing Manchester City one was out, and I remember seeing that, and just from that you could tell Arteta was doing everything he could, trying to learn as much as he can, as quickly as he could from Guardiola. So I was quite excited when he got the Arsenal job and wanted to see how he did. Obviously, didn't get off to the greatest of starts, but it is what it is. But I'm really keen to see how he gets on, and there's some exciting signings there. I think Willian will be a great addition. Magalhaes, I know a lot of clubs obviously in Europe were after him, and so I think defensively he struggled a lot, but there seems to be a big Brazilian contingent coming at Arsenal. And in fact, the reveal video for Magalhaes I thought was excellent, with Luis and Willian on the phone chat. If you mentioned Ceballos is coming back, I really want to say, I don't think they'll get top 4 this season. I'm sorry to say, I don't think it'll happen. I think they need that slightly transitional period with these new players coming in, really get what Arteta wants from them. But I think they'll kick on from there. I think, unfortunately, I'm going to have to say this, Neil, I think this could be the season that Arsenal finally get back on top above Spurs in the table.
You would hope so.
I think that could happen. But also, just quickly going back to what you said about the Twitter poll, everyone knows that Arsenal fans always win Twitter polls regardless of what it's about. So I don't know if you can read too much into that. But yeah, no, I think there's really astute signings there. They've addressed some key areas. But it's going to be interesting to see who else they bring in during this window. I mean, but would if it was up to you, would you let Bellerin go?
Yeah, I would. I mean, if it was the right money, I think Ainsley Maitland-Niles, if it was for the right money, I think, because Ainsley Maitland-Niles, I think he can be better than Bellerin at right back. I think he's a lot more athletic, and Bellerin has looked very slow. He lost so much pace after that ACL. He lost so much pace, and it's more so his ability with his exchanges with passing, positional kind of stuff, where I think he's probably a bit better. But I'm happy to see Bellerin go if it means we make a signing in central attacking midfield, or maybe just in midfield in general, because I think Arsenal are full of players that can perform in the wide areas. We're full of strikers. We've got so many centre backs. Not that we've got many quality ones, but if there's one area, I love Bellerin. I think he's a great bloke. I love, he's a different character too. I think that's interesting, a person to have around the club too. But I think it's hard for me to say. But if it means him going and us getting someone like Ura, I don't know if that's how you pronounce it, from Lyon. Someone that can really I say this example every time. Someone as close as De Bruyne as you can get.
Yeah.
I know that De Bruyne is just a great player, but we need someone in that position because at the moment I don't see us challenging, or I think I see us dropping a lot of points to the likes of Fulham, who we have in the first round, to those smaller teams who we have to press the play against. Whereas
the thing is, though, you've got, again, this will be a lead on to another question, but you've got someone who does have excellent passing ability on the books. It's just a case of, obviously, with Ozil. Is there any way back for Ozil in this side, or?
No, but I mean, the thing with Ozil too is even when he played last season, he played like the first 10 games under Arteta. He got 1 assist or maybe 2 assists. He's not even close to what he was back in the day.
No.
I mean, if we're talking about Ozil 3 years ago, I'd put him in the side 100%, and I think we'd have a lot of problems solved. But he's nowhere near the player he used to be, and his attitude is the biggest reason why he's out of the squad at the moment. Yeah. So even if we got the best Mesut Ozil possible in terms of his attitude, commitment to the team, I don't think he's good enough. I'd probably rather have maybe Dani Ceballos in centre attacking midfield. There's also talk of Willian playing there, which would be really interesting. I agree with you, George. Right now, as we speak, I see Arsenal coming 5th. But if we can pick up a quality attacking midfielder, sounds like Orba's going to re-sign. Ceballos is coming back. Our defence is getting better by the minute. I think we can definitely. I'd be very confident in making top 4 if we can make a big signing there.
I mean, there have been a lot of people have been speaking about, potentially Arsenal putting in a bid for that. I think that's how you pronounce it. That's how I would say it. But and he's mustard when he played against us in He's always been a player that I've admired. It's just the fluidity of his movement, the ability to find space. That alone is a hard enough ability to find within the player. Just that instant ability to be able to get into a space, find those little pockets, and make things happen. And again, he did that to us. But the thing is, the last time I bigged up a player and said they were phenomenal against us was Ndombele, and he's not done very well since he's come to the Premier League, has he? So
you didn't even mention him before, Marius, I don't think.
No. but no, he's a great player. So if you manage to get someone of his ilk or his calibre, then I think you're a very, very strong side. But I think you need this season to kind of like transition and bed everyone in and really sort of know where you're going. But no, as I've said, like Arteta, I love Arteta. I think he's just a class act as a man anyway. So I'd always want him to do well. And he seems to be doing the job. He seems to have the respect of the players, which is obviously a key point. So it'll be interesting to see how you boys do this season.
Yeah. Oh, we've got Marius back. I thought we'd lost him for a sec. But yeah, no, I think like I said before, I think we can proven over the last couple of months that we can pick up points against Man City, Liverpool, Chelsea, these big clubs. But I think the problem will be accumulating, getting those sure wins, I guess is the best way to say it for a top 6 club. I think we're going to miss a lot of those points right now because we have to press the game to them. And the best way to do that is with a back 4, which then, leaves us very liable at the back for 1. And 2, even if we play, let's just say we played a back 3, Xhaka and Ceballos were the mainstays in the middle there, and they were not creating a whole lot for Aubameyang, Pepe and Lacazette. So, I don't see anything changing there, no matter what formation we have, unless we can get a quality centre attacking midfielder at the club. And another I'd like to just talk a little bit about someone else that no one will talk about this season, but I think he's going to be really interesting to see how he progresses, is that Emile Smith-Rowe. I think he's really good, and I think he was game-changing for Huddersfield last year. He was their best player. This is just from what I've heard from Huddersfield fans, that he was their best player once he signed a loan deal with them after the COVID break, or at January time. He can play that position, but the problem is, and so can the likes of Joe Willock. I think Joe Willock needs a loan. He's like your classic example of someone who needs game time. But I'm really interested to see how Smith-Rowe goes this season. And there's also potential that Saka could fill that role too. So, we'll see. We'll see if they end up getting any business done. I hope so, because we've got a lot of players that we can ship out and make a lot of money from. Guendouzi, even Torreira. I love Torreira, but I don't think he suits the way Arteta wants to play. You can ship him out. Socrates, Mustafi. There's so much money that we can be made from selling all those players and get a decent attacking midfielder in.
Yeah. Interesting times then.
Is Guendouzi leaving? Is that because there was a fight or something with him in the room, like he was very unhappy last season. But is he actually leaving?
Yeah. I think I've...
Oh.
Yeah, just lost you there, mate. What were you saying?
I asked whether Guendouzi was actually leaving, because there was some uproar with him in the dressing room and stuff last year. But is he going?
Yeah, I think they definitely want to get rid of him, but it's just about having a buyer, because this is... So I think he started his career at PSG, and there was problems there with his attitude. So then they shipped him off to... I can't remember what side he went to before Arsenal, but then they were also having problems with his attitude there too. So then he came to Arsenal, it's the same thing again. So I think it's now a point of... It's very hard to find a price for him, because Arsenal will want top dollar, because he's a very, very, very good midfielder for his age. And he could be a key signing for someone elsewhere all over Europe. I mean, he could just about walk into any team in Europe and play a very big role. So at the age of, he's probably 20, 21 now, you want to be getting top dollar for him, but it's such a weird market at the moment that if you try and get top dollar for him, not only is that hard in COVID at the moment, but also the fact that who wants to take that burden on? There's a chance that he'll flip out in a couple of years and not get on with people and stuff like that and ruin your culture. So I get the feeling that if they do get rid of him, it'll be right at the end of the window when Arsenal have kind of got no option but to just take whatever price they can get, because he's not going to get any game time under Arteta. I think it's a similar situation to with Ozil. So I think it might have to wait right till the end, and I don't know how much you get for him. I think at this point, maybe 15, 20, you might have to take that price, unfortunately, even though in a normal market, he might be worth north of 30 million.
Yeah, I think he's a pretty good player, but it's too bad that his attitude doesn't match his abilities. But I'm actually going to throw out a bit of a torch here and say that I don't actually rate the signing that Arsenal did with Willian. Not because he's a bad player, because I think he's a pretty good player. He's very hardworking, and he got 9 goals and 9 assists in the Premier League last season. So he's a good player overall, but tying up like an aging player who just turned 32 at like a 3-year contract, I think it was, who was going to block minutes for some of the youngsters that Arsenal has. I don't think that is the smartest decision, because I think Arsenal need to recognize that if they are going to break back into the top 4, then what they need is to get some of these youngsters through, get them into the team so they can free up some cash to invest in the signings that can really like take the club forward. Either that or go with like a Dortmund approach of buying highly talented players like Wenger did back in the day, and sort of building towards the future, and then selling some players off, keep reinvesting the money and get back into it. But yeah, signings like that is a bit like a short-term gamble for me that is going to eat into the money you have over the next 2-3 years, and I wouldn't do it at least.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I've got 2 problems with the Willian signing. One is if he plays on the wing, I think that's just that makes the signing even worse, because we've got so many wingers and youngsters coming through that deserve to be played in that spot. And also the second thing is that it's a 3-year deal, so that means Willian will be playing for Arsenal when he's 36 years old, and it's not like he's a Thiago Silva, let's just say, who, you know, it's not all about how fast he can run and all these kind of things. It's about he has to be very athletic in that position. So there's another issue with that. The only way I'll be happy with this signing is if he turns out to be the central player that we need, because there's been lots of talks that he always wanted to play at Chelsea in the central attacking midfielder position. So if he fills that role for us, then I'm happy with the signing. But if he plays on the wing, yeah, I think it's just a complete, maybe not a waste of money, but it's just not it's not a long-term decision, is it?
Yeah, I think just in terms of his flexibility, just kind of his versatility, I think he's a very good signing in that sense. And you've got, I mean, I'm looking forward to seeing like Reece Nelson as well. You know, kind of what he does.
Well, that's the thing; it blocks his pathway, though.
Yeah, but is he going to be playing every game? You know, is he at that stage? I don't think he's quite ready.
No, he's
yet.
not.
I think in that sense, it's good to have that rotation. You can kind of get Willian to fill in, and again, as cover for a few injuries. And I mean, it was a while ago. I think was it Shakhtar he played for before Chelsea, and you know, he did have games there where again, if he's kind of expressing that, maybe that's a kind of resurgence. Maybe you can kind of change his game. Actually, as painful as it is to say it, I think Arsenal are really heading in the right direction. I think they're my outside bet. You know, I'm having a bet on them getting top four, sneaking in fourth. I just think Arteta's just doing interesting things. He's just kind of tactically just setting up his team. He's been clever in terms of like players he's brought back into the fold. You know, kind of managing these situations already. And I just think they're going to be very interesting. I think he's a very good coach. He surprised me. There's a lot of coaches will kind of say that they're going to become the next Guardiola, and they've got kind of lofty plans. But you know, it's easy to he's put his money where his mouth is, and I actually genuinely think they've got a really good chance this year. You know, this is coming from a Spurs fan, so yeah.
Thanks, mate. Means a lot. All right, before we get into our top six predictions, we might as well mention the other big challenges: Wolves, Leicester, Everton, and if you want to go really much further down, Southampton, Leeds, Sheffield United aren't really rated in terms of the odds, even close to making the top six, but I mean, they did it, or they got very close last year, so they're worth a shout, or at least talking about again. Are there any of these teams, Marius, in your opinion, that deserve mention of making the top six potentially?
Well, I have Wolverhampton in my top six predictions, so I think they are going to do well. They won't be bothered with the Europa League this year, which was really draining on their resources last season. So I think that's always a massive advantage for whichever team doesn't make it into the Europa League and for their performance for the next season. So yeah, I think even with selling Doherty, it shouldn't affect them too much. They got some good players who can fill that role.
Yeah, no, I think I agree with that. I was tossing up between Spurs and Wolves for sixth, but the no Europa League makes a big difference because a lot of their criticism was that they didn't have a great squad and that they would play a pretty consistent starting 11, which is a problem during this new season coming up in a compact schedule. So I think, not having Europa League might be the key difference between them making top six and not. George and Neil, have you guys got any thoughts on either of Wolves, Leicester City making it into the top six?
I'm still undecided on Leicester. I'm not. Obviously, they faltered towards the end of last season. They stumbled, didn't they? And my concern is that they'll continue that reign of form. They were excellent to begin with last season, but I think they'll drop out of the top six this season. I think, I'd say Wolves are the most solid bet for top six. I think with the others that you've kind of mentioned, I mean, obviously Everton with the signings they're rumoured to make, it sounds great on paper, but there's been so many times before when Everton have made signings that you think are absolutely excellent and you expect them to get top six and they finish in the bottom half. So I wouldn't want any on Everton there. Then the others, I think, is far too much of a stretch for them to reach the top six. So for me, between Spurs and Wolves, again, I'm going to have to go with Wolves. I think they'd be my favourites for the top six.
Yeah, I'd go with that. I think it's a no-brainer. I think just, again, because they don't have Europe to concentrate on, they're quite consistent. They're quite a settled side. They've got a lot of quality. Although, they haven't brought anyone. I mean, they brought in, was it Matthias Sarkic from Villa? I think that's it. I don't know if they brought anyone else in yet. They've got rid of Helder Costa. Matt Doxey's come to us. Although, how much sort of difference that has on the team, I don't know. I think with Everton, they're kind of like a poor man's Chelsea. I think, again, they're too top heavy. They've got a lot of attacking talent. But again, in terms of consistency, having Ancelotti as your manager is a kind of cachet. They could get some interesting players in, maybe a few on loan. But I just can't see them kind of doing much. I think Southampton will have a good season. I think they can improve. They had a good bit of a run towards the end of the season. So their potentials. I'll be fascinated to see Leeds and what they can do. I'm a massive Bielsa fan, but I think they're not as much of a goal threat, I think, as you'd assume. I think like a lot of their goals, they had a lot of games last year, under 2.5 goals. They were a good bet for that, which is not what you'd kind of expect. And Bielsa teams as well, they kind of hit the ground running, but fade off in the second half of the season. So what I'm interested to see is how they prepare for the league now, because of that gap, because they were so fresh when they came back, when the championship started, and it was kind of made for them, for a Bielsa team, how they actually do. So I'm going to have, let's say a cheeky one on Leeds being in the top 6 at Christmas, although I wouldn't stay in that kind of afterwards. I could see, a bit of lack of momentum. And again, Sheffield United, did they overachieve? Can they actually maintain that? But I think it's between Wolves and Leicester, really. I can't really see any of the others kind of breaking through.
Yep. All right, fellas. Well, let's get into our top 6 predictions in order. I can kick us off. I'll go City first over Liverpool, just based on squads and the fact that they could nab Messi, and they've also fixed a lot in their defence this year, City. So I've got City over Liverpool. Then I've got Chelsea third, Man United fourth, Arsenal fifth. The only thing I would change Arsenal and Man United over if, like I said a million times, if we can get a good central attacking midfield signing. And I've got Wolves in sixth. Marius, who have you got, mate?
So I have Liverpool to win the league again this year. I think they're gonna make it, mainly because they've been so consistent over the last 2 seasons, scoring like 97, I guess, and 98 points. City still need to close the gap from last year. I expect that it will be down to like a point or something again this season. But yeah, I put Liverpool ahead. I think Chelsea will take some time to gel, but I still have them on third, and Manchester United on fourth, because yeah, their run this spring was just absolutely amazing. I have Wolverhampton on fifth, and they actually depends a bit on which source you look at, but some sources for expected goals have them as the second, conceding the second lowest expected goals in the league. So for teams like Arsenal and Tottenham and Chelsea, for that matter, they still need to get to Wolves' level, which is already on par with all of the elite teams. And Wolves are already there, so they just need to score a bit more goals, and then they'll be settled. Arsenal in sixth. I think they are showing a better trajectory than Spurs, unfortunately. And don't think that Leicester is going to live up to it this year. Jamie Vardy is not getting any younger, and at some point he's not going to score 20 goals a season, and they will struggle then.
George, mate, who have you got?
So I'm going actually obviously with City to win the title. So I know Marius just mentioned that the points total in both the seasons. Obviously we got 100 and then 98 and then dropped to 81. So it can happen. You can drop quite a lot. So I'm going to go with City to win the title. I'm then going with Chelsea to finish second, I think, with their signings.
The disrespect.
Yeah, I know. Slight bias, but I feel like with Liverpool, the way they're haggling and over, a sign of a calibre like Thiago, calibre of Thiago, don't worry about that. I just worry about their squad and the fact they've got a win percentage of 48% since February. Things often carry over into the following season, so it's only a punt. I think Liverpool are still a very good side. I could be proved absolutely wrong, but I think it'll be City over just before Chelsea in second, then Liverpool in third. I'll go United to finish fourth, and then I'm going to go with Arsenal and Wolves to finish fifth and sixth respectively.
Nice, mate. And Neil, why don't you finish us off, mate? Can someone get Spurs in their top six?
I'm going Liverpool. I just think they got the first one in such a long time. I just think that's going to ride them through it. City in second. I don't think anyone can catch those two. I just think the rest are still too far off. I'm going United third. Arsenal to sneak in fourth. I think Chelsea might miss out this year. And I've put Spurs in at sixth just out of hope, really. But to be honest, I think it's a toss-up between us and Wolves. Yeah.
All right. Very interesting. So two of us think Liverpool will win, two of us think City will win. So that'll be a very, very interesting battle there. And I think the consensus from looking at it, United and Chelsea third and fourth. Maybe a few of us think Arsenal can sneak into fourth, and Spurs missing out. That's another big one. All right, let's talk about the relegation battle very briefly, fellas. I'll name kind of the teams that you can pick from: Brighton, Burnley, Palace, Newcastle. You can throw Sheffield United in there too, West Ham, and then the three betting favourites. Well, this was as of last week. Were Fulham, Villa, and West Brom to go down. George, mate, I'll start with you on this one. How do you see the relegation battle going this year?
Well, yeah, I mean, look at those teams. I mean, often the relegation battle's just as kind of exhilarating as the fight at the top. Brighton made some very astute signings in, obviously Lallana, so it's a good signing there. But lost Glenn Murray, I believe, on loan. But they're just a solid outfit. They are a solid side, so I think they'll be okay. I don't see them dropping. Burnley, Sean Dyche, they're just a well-oiled machine, aren't they? You know what you're going to get from Burnley. And they always overachieve. It seems they're consistently overachieving. So they'll be okay. Personally, just to kind of make things quicker, looking at it in terms of who's going to get relegated, I think West Brom will stay up. I think my favourites for relegation are Villa, Fulham, and I think West Ham are going to struggle. So my bets would be West Ham, Fulham and Villa.
All right, nice. And I'll get...
Well, yeah, so funny enough, one of my best friends is a West Brom fan, so I hear all the goings on in and out of a West Brom. For example, they're just about to sign Diangana back on, who they had on loan last season from West Ham, for around 12 million. West Ham fans are fuming. Just the way they play, they last season in the Championship, they slightly let pressure get to them a bit, I think, because there was no doubt, they're a very good side. They're a much better side than Brentford when they were playing, and they should have picked up more points. And I like what Slaven Bilic is doing there in terms of the way they play. They're very hard working, which you need in the Premier League. Which is why I think, like you said earlier, I'm excited to see how Leeds do. But they're hard working, but they do try and play some good football. But will that be slightly costly to them? Whereas West Brom are very hard working. So I think, it might be a case of, it's what you always see it with newly promoted sides. They do well the season they come up, and it's the season after, second season syndrome, that they falter. I think with Bilic in charge, with the way that West Brom play, they're a bit more suited to the Premier League as it stands. The way things are at the moment, things might change over the course of the year, but I think they'll do enough to stay up this season. Whereas when I look at, say Villa, Fulham and West Ham, Villa, obviously they rely heavily on Grealish to do something. Dean Smith, I don't really rate him as a manager, if I'm honest. I think they were very lucky to even stay up last season. Obviously with goal line technology not even being turned on for one game. Exactly, it's just ridiculous. And they've been. I think they were very fortunate to stay up, and I don't think they'll be able to do that again. The signings they're kind of making, they're signing Matty Cash from Nottingham Forest. These aren't signings. That's more of a signing you'd think would be like to prepare for the Championship. That's not to try and get further in the Premier League. So it depends on, obviously, the transfer window is still going to be open for a while, so we'll see who they bring in. But as things stand, I don't see Villa beating the drop. Fulham, again, they've never impressed me when they've been in recent years in the Premier League, and even in the Championship. Obviously, they came through the playoffs deservedly, but I just think looking at them, I see other teams being much better than them. So I think they'll go in the drop. And West Ham, they're losing Diangana. He's been great for actually West Ham in pre-season. That's why West Ham fans are fuming, because he's built up that partnership with Sebastian Haller. But you worry with West Ham. Just are there other teams around them that are better? All of the other teams that you've listed in the relegation battle, I see being better than West Ham. So for me, that's why those would be my three to go down. But yeah, it'd be an interesting one. I always look forward to kind of the relegation battle, probably because my club's not going to be in it. I'm sure if you're actually in it, it's an absolute nightmare.
Oh, I reckon.
But it's been a long time since we've been in one, so I don't have to worry about that now. But yeah, so those would be my three: West Ham, Fulham.
I always wonder what it would be like to support a team who, like, your goal is to just not get relegated every year.
Well, it used to be ours. So when we got to that 40-point mark, that's me done for the season then. But
yeah, well, I mean, I was going to say maybe at the end of this season we can ask Neil what that feels like. All right, Neil, what have you got then, mate?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not being too inventive here, to be honest. I'm just going with the three favourites. I can't see it. I guess I haven't seen enough of West Brom. I was only really sort of following them towards the end of the season because my second team is Brentford. They're my local team. And, you know, from where I was watching, it was basically Brentford who stuffed it up at the end and kind of handed it to West Brom on a plate. I just think they're just, you know, they don't have the quality really. I'm not. So I like Slaven Bilic as, you know, as a player, as a person who comes across well in interviews. In terms of his management style, I don't know, you know, if they're going to do it. I think Villa are so reliant on Grealish, like we've said already. I mean, Wesley, you know, is a talent, but then there's problems with injuries. Yeah. Trezeguet as well. They don't have that consistency. They're too reliant on Grealish if he gets injured or if someone signs him. I think, you know, they were lucky in some ways to stay up. Fulham, you know, I have to be careful what I say because my sister-in-law's boyfriend is a season ticket holder. It would be nice to go and watch a game. So
what's his name? Give him a shout out, mate.
Helgi. I think the previous Fulham sides were fantastic to watch. You know, the last time they came up, they were kind of a goal machine. They are, you know, maybe they're more conservative under Scott Parker now, but again, you know, they're not the most impressive. I think there's a kind of there's much of a muchness really in the bottom half. It's kind of congested. There's a lot of teams where kind of similar quality. It's going to be quite tough. You know, for those two, I think that kind of added edge with Leeds, you know, I mean, signing, like having the Bielsa connection and being able to sign someone like Rodrigo is massive, you know. So I think unless they get the checkbook out, unless there's some interesting signings there. With Mitrovic, you've got a brilliant striker, but, you know, he's as likely to get sent off as he is to score a goal. So you don't know what you can get. And, you know, again, so if he's missing that, you know, that's going to be a struggle. So, the only other team I would have a question mark is Palace, actually. I mean, I like Roy Hodgson. I think he's done a good job there. But, you know, they struggle. You know, they really don't score enough goals. They have this solid defence, but, you know, how sustainable is that? I'm not so sure. So they would probably be my fourth favourite to get relegated.
And Marius, mate, what have you got? If you're still there.
Let's hope the connection is stable enough. But yeah, for me, I have Fulham. I think they don't have a strong enough team overall. Obviously, having Mitrovic, who is a goal scorer, who's proven that he can do it in the Premier League in the past and also done it in Championship, is going to give them an edge over some of the other relegation candidates who doesn't have a very clear goal scorer. But I still think they're going to go down, and then following them will be West Brom, just precisely because they don't have a very clear goal scorer. If you're going to rely on Charlie Austin at this stage and Robson Canu to score your goals to keep you in the Premier League, I think you'll struggle. And finally, along them, I have Newcastle, who were the worst team on expected goals in the Premier League last year. I think the fact that they managed to finish so much higher up the league table compared to what their expected goals had them at was a lot due to Rafa Benitez being their last coach. And just as you often have teams who have like a second season syndrome after getting promoted to the Premier League, I also think that if you have a great manager and he gets replaced, you can see the effects of having that manager last for a year, and after that you're kind of on your own again. So I think that Newcastle are going to go down. And I think that Palace is a team that's been struggling a lot, but Roy Hodgson just has a way of keeping his sides and getting them to 40 points. And then it stops at 40 points, but he always gets teams to 40 points. And I really like the looks of Eze, the guy they signed from QPR. He has some amazing goals on his highlight reel, so very excited to see how he does in the Premier League, because him and Zaha can be pretty fun to watch in the attack. So that's my comments on the relegation zone.
All right, nice. I can give mine out. So, I mean, I wouldn't trust mine too much. I don't really watch too much of the relegation sides. But I think from looking at the teams that we talked about, I wouldn't think Burnley, Palace or Sheffield United would get relegated. I just think their systems are too solid at the moment. So I'd be looking at some of the other sides. So I've gone West Brom, West Ham. West Ham, I just think they were pretty unconvincing for most of last season. And it was only really like just a quick burst of form which let them avoid the drop. So I think another season that could be a possibility that they could get relegated. And lastly, one that we haven't mentioned, which is a bit of a smoky, Brighton. I think you got to have one smoky in there as to who's going to get relegated. And I don't think Brighton's football, the style of play that Potter's implemented, I don't think it suits a team that's trying to avoid relegation. I don't think it's sustainable. Maybe it won't be this year, maybe it won't be next year, but I think eventually their style of play is favourable to a team trying to avoid the drop. I think, putting systems in place like a Palace who can sit back, like a Burnley, these kind of teams, I think that's way more suited to avoiding relegation. So have you guys got any thoughts on Brighton?
Yeah, I was surprised by that when you put up Brighton, because I think I like what he's doing there. I think it's interesting, but I think it's a fair point that it's a risk as well. But I've seen some kind of... I mean, they weren't a great team to watch before, so I think it's kind of refreshing at least. They're trying a different approach. But yeah, time will tell, I think. But I think they'll be okay this year myself.
I mean, it's weird, it's going to sound absolutely mental, but I was half surprised and half not at the same time, because I think I like what they're doing there. The signings they brought, Veltman and Lallana, I think will do well. But interesting as well, they have lost Aaron Moy, who is obviously a very big player for them.
Legend.
In the middle of the park. Good old Aaron Moy. Ex-City legend as well, despite never playing a game. And obviously they've lost Anthony Knockaert, obviously, to Fulham as well. So it's going to be... It is difficult. Glenn Murray's gone as well. I know he's not their out-and-out striker anymore. But nevertheless, he was good backup to have and can always score. He's playing, obviously, for Watford on loan. So I think, if I'm right in saying, it's predominantly Mopay that will be there, obviously their main forward. So obviously they'll be very heavily reliant on him, and if he picks up an injury, then they could be really in trouble. But I still think they've got a little bit too much to go for the drop. But if things don't go their way, such as injuries, then they could get dragged into it. But I wouldn't have them in my bottom three right now.
I think it's fair enough,
Yeah,
mate. All right, fellas. Probably the thing that everyone's been
Brighton.
waiting out. Oh, sorry, Murray. Did Murray talk?
Yeah, I tried to talk.
Sorry, mate. You're on a massive lag.
Yeah. No, just my thoughts on Brighton. First of all, they have Tony Bloom as their owner, and they make very smart decisions with player analytics. So I have complete faith in their ability to stay in the Premier League. But they got Ben White back from loan on Leeds, and he just signed a new contract, so he's probably going to stay. And that's going to be a strength for the defense if he's as good as everyone says he is. Trossard had a breakthrough season last year. He's now capable of scoring goals and getting assists in the Premier League, which is pretty important for them. And Mopai, he scored goals. He can do it again. And I also very much like the look of Aaron Connolly. I think he's a pretty good talent and as a backup for the forward position. So very confident about them. And also, just want to add in one thing about Aston Villa. And last year they signed 11 players for their first team. And all of those players have now had a year to settle. So I think that is going to be something that can benefit them this second season and might be a part of what keeps them up. time will tell. Maybe they'll not have the quality in the end, but I think that's the thing that they can have going for them, that they have a much more settled squad this time around.
All right, fellas, should be a fun battle. All right, let's get into the value bets, or what we think is a bit of value out there for your future outright bets that you see right now. Obviously, there's still a lot to be at play. The window doesn't close for over another month, so a lot can happen. But how about you kick us off, George, mate? What are some of the value bets you're seeing right now?
So there's a couple that I quite like. And for me, I touched on it earlier, but it's for Werner to be the top goal scorer. You can get that at 11 to 1 over here, so that'd be as a decimal 12.0. Just the fact that he was the second top goal scorer behind Lewandowski last season, because Lewandowski was just ridiculous, like we all know that. But Chelsea obviously create a lot of chances, particularly with the players that they've signed. For example, like the ZX, and obviously if Havertz comes as well, they're going to create so many chances. And Werner is one hell of a finisher. He's a natural finisher. So at those odds, I think it's got an outside chance of landing. So yeah, I really like that one. And my other one is for Dean Smith to be the first manager sacked at 10s. Yes, he's a Villa fan, but I can't help but feel he's a little out of his depth with managing Villa in the Premier League. Watching him sometimes, his tactics are questionable, the things he does. Again, funnily enough, my two best mates, one's the West Brom and one's Villa, so the conversations are always good fun. But even he's always saying, it's so frustrating watching Villa because you can see things we need to do and he just doesn't do them. He doesn't know what he's doing. And I think if they get off to a very bad start, they've got some relatively tough fixtures to begin with. Obviously, the one against City is actually obviously postponed due to our European commitments. But they're playing Sheffield United, Fulham, Leeds as well. So they're all teams that are around them to begin with, plus Liverpool and Leicester as well. So it could quite possibly get off to a very bad start. And if I feel like Villa's owners could be slightly impulsive in that if they do get off to that bad start, considering how close they were to going down last season, they'll want to take immediate action straight away if things go badly to try and stop that from happening. So Dean Smith to be the first manager sacked, that's a 9 to 1 or 10.0. So I think that's a good value bet for that one. So those would be my two value bets so far, but obviously with the transfer window still open and things not completely settled on how they're going to be, obviously that might change. But for the moment, those are the two that I like.
Yep, and Neil, mate, I see you've got a few here. Nothing to do with Spurs, though. So what do you got, mate?
Yeah, I try to avoid betting on Spurs. But, I'm kind of scattergun approach. I think Wolves, there's a sort of without the top six market, without the big six market, sorry. So they're at 3.25 for that. I think I quite like that price. I think they've got a good chance of landing. So I like those odds. I think tied to who we're looking at to get relegated as well. So for me, I'm looking at Bilic first to be sacked at around 15s. And the second two are kind of more punts, really, just kind of small ones. But I think Leeds for a top six finish at 17. I think Bielsa is going to relish this chance, to be in the Premier League, to kind of pit himself against the best. Leeds back in the big time. Once fans kind of come back to the stadiums as well, I think Ellen Road is going to be a difficult place to go to. And you never know. I think, that could be one to trade out, for me again. So again, if those markets are up on the exchanges, I'll look at that and maybe kind of close that around Christmas if they're going well. And Chelsea to be top scorers. I think, I like George's bet, actually, the Werner bet. I think, my only concern is that he might take a little bit of time to hit the ground running. Also, there's so many potential goal scorers in that Chelsea team now. I don't know if he'll be taking penalties, again, so that could kind of factor in. But I think as an each way, yeah, that's definitely a good play. But I would say Chelsea is the highest scoring team at 20s. I quite like that. I think they've got a chance.
Yeah, no, I would agree. I might as well get onto mine now because I think I've just picked up a bit from you and George there, and I quite like those odds of Werner to finish top goal scorer at 11s, and I really like the one you just mentioned, Neil, Chelsea to finish as the highest scoring team at 20. I think that's some decent odds for a team that a very good chance of that happening. It's not like Liverpool scored that many goals, so it would be more so maybe. Sorry.
I mean, it'll need City to,
It'll be City, yeah.
They'll 4-0 up against Fulham,
Yeah.
Exactly. City have been the top goal scorers for. I'm just looking now. I think it's potentially the last 5 or 6 seasons on the bounce. They've scored more. Oh no, it's the last 4 seasons. They've scored more than any other side. Weirdly, before that, thinking that it was actually Spurs who scored the most. That is odd. Didn't expect to find that, but
certainly won't happen under Mourinho, mate.
But yeah, it's just it is a strong bet though. I like that. As you said, they've got goals from anywhere now, and odds like that for Chelsea to be top scorers. Unless obviously we get the goat over from Barcelona, then it might be a little bit different. But no, other than that, I think it's a strong bet.
Yeah, so I agree with those two, and then I'd also throw in, I like Chelsea at 1.53 to make the top 4. I think it's 1.53, but I actually think there's value there. I think, considering Manchester United at 1.4, I think Chelsea should be closer to that, if not maybe even smaller, because I just don't see where the competition comes from with all those signings they've made. So I really like 1.53 for Chelsea, and yeah, maybe you could look at Arsenal at 4 in odds on the fact that they make a few signings before the deadline ends. If they do, then I think 4's value. But at the moment, I wouldn't really touch it. But maybe it's worth a little dabble. All right, Marius, what do you got, mate?
So I'm going all Liverpool on this one. I have Liverpool to win the league at 2.7. I think, it should be a lot closer between Liverpool and Manchester City. And I think that will be the case even if Manchester City sign Lionel Messi. I don't think they're gonna. The maximum amount of points is 114, and I think even with Messi in the team, you're not gonna get much above 100. And I think Liverpool will get very close to 100 points again, because their drop off only really happened at the time where they had pretty much secured the title. Before that, they were crushing teams and winning games. And another stat where they have been extremely impressive is their expected goal difference when the game state in the game, so that's like the goal difference between the two teams in the games, is ±1 and 0. And there, Liverpool are very much on par with City. So all the extra goals and everything that City scores are in games they are already winning. They're winning 5-0 instead of 1-0.
Yep. And
Liverpool just have the ability to win games where City drop points. So that brings me to the second bet, and that is Liverpool over 85.5 points at 1.735.
All right. Hopefully there's no bias in that, Marius.
Not at all. I'm very objective when it comes to that.
Of course, mate. You're a professional. All right, fellas. Well, that's it. We'll finish off with the quiz question. It's been a very, very long podcast. Just a tad longer than our normal podcast, but I guess we are passionate football fans, that's what happens. But which team conceded the fewest goals in an EPL season? Options: Chelsea, Man United, Arsenal, or Manchester City. And if you want, you can throw in how many goals it was and what season it was. If you do that, then maybe I'll give you a free month with Trademate. So, although that doesn't really mean much to Marius, why don't you go first, mate?
I'm gonna go with Chelsea 19 goals under Mourinho, and if I'm gonna guess a season, I would go 05-06, even though I'm not sure if Chelsea won the league that year. But yeah, I'm going with those.
Yep. Neil?
I've forgotten about that one actually. I would say one of the sort of George Graham Arsenal teams, but I think that'd probably be a red herring. So yeah, I'd go with Chelsea then.
Oh, just to be a little bit different, I'll go for I don't want to say it, Manchester United, just to throw a bit of difference in there.
Well, there you go. Well, you're wrong, George. And yes, it is Chelsea. And you were very close, Marius, actually. Sorry, I've lost where it was. But I'm pretty sure it was in the 04-05 season. I'll just see if I can find it. I just had it up before. But yeah, I believe it was only 15 goals, which is just outrageous.
Yeah, staggering.
And I believe it was the 04-05 season, but I'll see if I can find it now. I'm cracking under pressure here. I don't think I'm going to find it. Oh, no, wait. No, that's not it. Oh, no, here it is. Yeah, 04-05 season, and they conceded 15 goals. So I'll probably have to give you the win there, Marius, and a free month of Trademate.
Yes.
All right. Well, terrific stuff, fellas. And thanks for coming on. Really appreciate your time. Give these guys a follow on both Twitter and also follow George's write-ups for We Love Betting. Also, Neil's writing up lots of stuff for various websites. Follow his journey becoming a pro sports bettor. You can follow George at CGeorgeGamble, and you can follow Neil at what's your tag again, mate? I've forgotten.
My Bet or Life.
My Bet or Life, that's right. And at Marius Norheim. I think there might be an underscore maybe between Marius and Norheim.
Yeah,
But
it is.
most importantly, you want to start a free week trial of Trademate Sports, everyone. So make sure you listen to some of the value betting strategies we listened today, and you can implement them into a free week trial with Trademate Sports. And if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe and rate and review our podcast. But once again, fellas, terrific stuff, and enjoy the season of the EPL.
Likewise. Thank you all.
See you guys.